Most founders believe they are running their business. What they are actually doing is responding to it. The distinction sounds subtle, but it determines everything about how the operation grows, how decisions get made, and how much of the founder's time gets consumed by problems that should never have reached them in the first place. Reactive operation has a specific architecture. Decisions arrive faster than the system can absorb them, so the founder processes each one at the point of impact, rather than at the point of design. That is not decision-making. That is damage control with a different name. The business is not being directed. It is being managed from behind. And the reason most founders stay in that mode longer than they should is that reactive management feels productive. Every problem that gets solved feels like progress. Every fire that gets put out feels like leadership. But solving problems at the point of impact is not the same as preventing them from arriving. And a business that depends on the founder's constant availability to process incoming situations is not a system. It is a dependency, a well-disguised one, because the founder is usually good at processing inputs quickly, and that speed gets mistaken for operational strength when it is actually a structural vulnerability. The difference between a reactive founder and a directive one is not temperament. It is structural. A reactive system routes every new input to the person at the top because no one built the layer that intercepts it first. Reactivity is not a habit. It is an architectural default. And defaults do not change because the founder decides to be more intentional. They change when the architecture changes. That architecture has a specific shape. In a reactive business, the decision layer sits at the top. Every significant input, a client issue, a team question, a process breakdown, an unexpected opportunity travels upward until it reaches the founder. The founder processes it, makes a call, and sends it back down. That loop repeats hundreds of times a week across every part of the operation. And the cumulative cost of that loop is not just the founder's time. It is the speed of the entire business, which can only move as fast as the founder can personally process what is arriving. What makes this particularly difficult to escape is that the loop is self-reinforcing. The more the founder processes, the more the business learns to route things to the founder. The team stops making calls because the founder always makes them. The clients escalate because escalation always gets a response. The processes stall because the next step always requires founder sign-off. The reactive pattern trains everyone around the founder to wait, and that waiting becomes the operational rhythm of the business without anyone consciously choosing it. Building the layer that intercepts inputs before they reach the founder is not complicated in principle, but it requires something most founders resist: making decisions in advance rather than in response. Documenting what the right answer looks like before the situation arrives. Giving someone else the authority to act on that answer without escalating. Creating a system that can process common situations without the founder's involvement because the founder's judgment is already embedded in the structure. This is where most founders underestimate the scope of the work. They think building this layer means writing a few process documents and delegating a handful of tasks. But the layer is not about tasks. It is about judgment. The question is not who does the work. It is who makes the call. And in most reactive businesses, the answer to that question is always the founder, regardless of how many people are technically involved in executing the work around them. A business without pre-made decisions will always be reactive. Not because the founder lacks intention, but because intention is not a system. Every situation that arrives without a pre-existing decision framework becomes a new problem requiring a new judgment call in real time. That is not leadership. That is a founder-shaped bottleneck dressed up as involvement. The business does not run on how present you are. It runs on what you decided before you got there. The practical move is to start with the decisions that repeat. not the genuinely strategic calls that require the founder's judgment every time. The operational decisions that arrive in the same form, week after week, and get processed through the founder, not because they require the founder's wisdom, but because nobody ever documented the right answer and gave someone else the authority to execute it. Every recurring decision that still routes to the founder is a sign that the architecture has not caught up with the operation's complexity. And complexity always grows faster than architecture in a reactive business because the founder is too busy processing inputs to build the layer that would reduce them. That is the trap. The very thing that needs to change requires time and attention that the reactive cycle is consuming. Breaking out of it requires accepting a period of deliberate inefficiency while the new layer gets built, and most founders never make that trade because the reactive cycle always has something more urgent demanding attention. The transition from reactive to directive happens decision by decision, framework by framework. Each time the founder documents a recurring decision and removes themselves from the loop, the architecture gets slightly more capable of operating without constant founder input. Over time, that compounds. The business starts moving faster, not because the founder is working harder, but because fewer things are waiting for the founder's availability to proceed. The goal is not to remove the founder from the business. It is to remove the founder from the decisions that do not actually need them, keeping the founder's judgment concentrated on the decisions that genuinely require it, and building the structure that means everything else can be resolved without the founder being in the room. That is what it means to stop being reactive and start directing. Not more discipline, not better prioritization, a different architecture. One where the founder's decisions are already embedded in the system before the situation arrives, rather than being extracted from the founder after the situation lands. Next episode, we are going into something that connects directly to this. Why your business keeps moving without you actually steering it. Because removing yourself from reactive decision-making is one thing. Understanding why the business develops its own momentum and direction independent of your intentions is a different problem entirely. I will see you tomorrow.